You are not alone, but you might feel very alone when your family or your friends don't believe in your intuitive gifts or messages. Have you ever gotten that side eye or kind of that face like, what are you talking about? That feeling where you don't feel supported. This is a passion. You're excited. Oh my gosh, I really think I'm intuitive. That thing that I told you about the other day came true. How weird. When so many of these validations add up for you, you know it's real, but the people around you might not believe it. Inside of this episode, we're going to be talking about what that means for you, what to do about it, and how you get through it. So stay tuned. Welcome to Spiritual and Ambitious. I'm your host, Whitney McNeil. I'm a certified medium and spiritual teacher, and I help spiritual and ambitious souls just like you live your life purpose through your career and attract abundance by connecting into your intuition and spirit guides. Let's get spiritual and ambitious. All right, so today we are talking about when your family doesn't believe in your intuitive abilities or your spiritual gifts. I'm really surprised I haven't recorded an episode like this before. And this is something that's really helpful, I think, to hear if you're listening and you relate to this. And if you do, reach out to me over on Instagram at Messenger of Spirit. I want to hear from you. Let me know if you felt this way before. But a lot of people, when they come to me and they start working in their spiritual side and they want to understand their abilities, most likely have had some inklings that they've had this ability before. So perhaps they just knew something, or they woke up from a dream and what they dreamed came true, or they had a feeling about something and it came true. While so many times people just kind of fluff it off like, oh, that was cool, I was right. Honestly, it's your intuitive ability, and it's just you waking up and starting to understand. And the more that these moments add up in your life, then that scientific mind says, oh yeah, I was right. Okay, this is something different. This is not just happenstance. But when you start talking about these abilities to your friends or to your family, you might get some side eye, like, yeah, okay, all right, we'll see about this. So what happens when you decide to really talk about your intuition, or you decide to start your business and do mediumship or do readings? Your family and friends may not support you, and that doesn't feel so good. So let's talk about what that means. What do you do, and how do you get through it? Okay. One thing is, what does it mean? It means nothing about you. It's all about them. When you step into your intuitive abilities and your spiritual gifts, there's a couple things that happen. One, you start talking about it. And I do think that it's really important that you do talk about it. The more that you talk about it, the more that you shine your light, the more people will find you. It might just mean that you don't talk about it with these friends and family members because they're not going to understand. But it means nothing about you, it's about them. So one, when you talk about it, it causes the person to think or to open up to a different concept that they're not familiar with. And if they're not familiar with it, some people are curious, like, oh, interesting. And some people are just shutting it down, like, nope, not for me. That's them kind of protecting themselves because they don't really want to investigate further. Another thing is when you shine into your intuitive ability, they start questioning themselves in some form or capacity. Do I believe that intuitive abilities are real? Do I have intuitive abilities? I've shut it down myself. So let's just say that you were talking to somebody who used to think they had their intuitive ability, and then they decided to shut it down. Well, you might be triggering something, right? So who knows what goes on in the stories of other people's minds, but it means nothing about yourself. Now, of course, if you are seeing and hearing and all these different things, and your family's concerned, also please make sure that everything's okay medically. But I'm talking about real intuitive ability here, where you are just knowing something and it happens, you're feeling something and it happens, you're seeing something and it happens, you're hearing it and it happens. So what it really means is you're stepping into your purpose. And when you start stepping into your purpose, when you start becoming into alignment, guess what? Your life changes. You start shifting your vibration. You start shifting your energy. And when this happens and you start following your intuition, you start changing your habits, changing your beliefs, and changing your patterns. And the people around you may not like it. They're used to you being you, and now you're changing. So what this really means is the people around you may not be comfortable with change. They may want you to sit in the box that they've known you to sit in and just stay the way that you are because they are fearful of change and the unknown. But that doesn't mean that you are. That's what they want, not what you want. So what it really means for you, you're stepping in, you're aligning to your purpose, you're aligning to your energy. You are on the right path when you start to really move into your intuitive abilities. And this means that it's probably time to find a different group of people to talk to about this, because it doesn't feel good when you're talking to a brick wall and you get nothing back. And then when you do get something back, it's resistance. So it's not your job to convince your family or your friends of your abilities. It is your responsibility to honor the abilities that you have. And I'm going to encourage you to find an outlet to speak to others about this. But you do not have to prove anything to them. That's what I want you to hear. You do not have to prove anything to the people that don't believe that you have it. What I want your inner journey to be, or what I hope it is for yourself, is to trust the abilities and let it grow. You can think of yourself like a flower. If you've now planted the seed of intuition, how are you going to nurture it and grow? Are you going to give positive vibrations to this? It reminds me of the water study where people would say really nice things to water and really mean things to water. And then you'd see the crystals in the water and you could see the differences of the positive and the negative. So are you treating yourself with positive vibrations and thoughts and nurturing these abilities so that they can grow and blossom and bloom? Or are you not feeding the flower or the seed, and instead you're allowing the energy of the people who are the naysayers to let this flower wilt and stunt the growth? So when this happens, you are faced with a decision. Are you ready to hide it or to shine? This, to be honest, can be such a struggle from this lifetime and past lifetimes. So while you start stepping out of this intuitive kind of closet in a way, you start to shine more light on this intuitive ability. And when you do this, you can start feeling proud of yourself, confident, but then at the same time wanting to retract a little bit. So normally what happens is people will start saying they're intuitive in one group of people, like to one group of people, but then they hide it from the others. Now, to be honest with you, when I talk to my neighbors and I go on my walks and they say, oh, hey, how are you? I don't necessarily lead with, hey, I'm intuitive, I'm a psychic medium, because it's not really necessary or appropriate. But if they ask me what I do, I'm going to tell them what I do. But what happens is I'm striking a conversation with them. We really like each other's vibe. We're talking. And then the more they get to know me, and then they finally understand what I do, in a way, because they've already known me on some level, it almost kind of softens the blow and piques their curiosity instead of thinking, oh, this person's such a weirdo that's living in my neighborhood. Now, of course, this is for the person that might not believe in intuition. 9 times out of 10, when I talk to people about what I do, they're like, oh, that's really cool. That's interesting. Tell me a little bit more. But what other people think about you doesn't matter. And for sensitive souls, that can feel very daunting. I call it, why don't you like me syndrome? Like, why don't you like me? I'm a good person. I'm doing my best here. What's going on here? It's not your job to make people like you. It's not your job to try to convince them that what you do is real. And it's not your job to convince them to believe in your abilities. What is your job is to live your life and cultivate your intuitive abilities so that you can live your life purpose. So are you going to hide or are you going to shine? I'm going to talk more about this when we come back from this really quick break. So stay tuned. Let's be honest here. Do you have a zillion oracle cards in your possession, but you just really want to find that aligned deck that works with you? Or do you just like to collect fun oracle cards? I am so excited to announce my Messenger of Spirit Oracle is here. This is a 52 card deck with a booklet that includes a short and long description, as well as affirmations and an aligned suggested crystal to use. I am over the moon with the way this deck looks and feels and the energy and the vibration. And I'm so happy to feel connected to this deck. So I'd love for you to order over at messengerofspirit.com/cards. And I want to celebrate with you. As soon as you get these cards, I'd like for you to tag me on social at Messenger of Spirit and tell me you got them. messengerofspirit.com/cards. As a professional psychic medium, I've done tens of thousands of readings, but I felt a call to move more fully into teaching intuition. But I still get so many requests about doing readings. So while I don't do readings anymore, I have brought in some very trusted colleagues who are now available for live 1-hour readings on Zoom. If you would like to book your psychic medium reading, go to messengerofspirit.com/appointments to see our available readers and schedule your Zoom reading today. All right, thanks for hanging in there. We are talking about, are you hiding or shining with your intuitive ability? So maybe you've come out a little bit more into the world of intuition with certain people in your life, but you're still really putting that card in your back pocket for some others. That's okay. You don't have to lead with it. But when faced with a situation or asking what you do or what your business is about, or, hey, what about all this intuitive stuff? If you're not telling the truth or you're really not wanting to answer that question, that can be that you're hiding. When I first started my business, I got lots of questions from my family. Are you talking to the devil? The Bible says that you can't do this. And who gave you this ability? Or, why do you feel like you can start a business? So one, I had a conversation with them about the devil and the Bible. And really, that is going to be based on someone's spiritual and religious beliefs. You cannot convince someone to believe a certain way. And what I said was, hey, I'm only interested in the positive, and I work with spirit guides that help people's lives. If I gave doom and gloom messages, then I would be concerned. But I work with my spirit team that help me, that protect me, and that are making sure they're only bettering people's lives and really helping them find solutions. So that was really helpful. But again, I can't convince somebody to believe a certain way for religious reasons or spiritual reasons. So that's how I explained it. And I also said, hey, you know who I am. I'm a person that wants to help people. I want to impact people's lives. And I only want to do things that are very good for others. They also knew my story. When I was a child, I saw spirit all the time. And I did reference that. And I said, I've always had these experiences, and I talked about them when I was younger. And when I was older, I still had those experiences, and I didn't talk about them as much. And I was really afraid. I was so afraid to step into my purpose and my gifts for so long. And I finally now have learned a system where I can effectively connect to my spirit guides, and I'm not worried because I have a team that's working for me and through me instead of me trying to discern every spirit. I have a team that I work with. And that's what I teach my students inside of Four Intuitive Languages. Because for me, for years, I was afraid of who I was talking to in spirit. When I learned I had a team and I had spirit guides for certain roles in my life, especially a doorkeeper to help filter out anything that doesn't need to be in my energy, that was really, really nice. So just having that kind of conversation, but again, I'm detaching from the outcome of the conversation. Now, one area of my life where it was a little bit harder was when I was working for someone else, and then I had started a business. So if you're out there and you're in the same place, DM me over on Instagram. I want to know. Find me at Messenger Spirit. So I was working in a more, let's say, corporate kind of role. And then I also was starting my own business. And I kept those very separate for a long time until people started finding me online. But what was I going to do? Was I going to hide or was I going to shine? Well, of course, I said, I'm going to shine. So people knew me as one version of Whitney, but they didn't know the other version until they started finding me. And then they started talking, and then they finally started asking. And I found that the people that really do ask are curious. They want to know. And the people that don't want to know don't ask. And that's simple, right? So you get to decide how in depth you want to go in a conversation with someone. You get to decide if you're going to help pique someone's curiosity, because your light, the more you shine, it draws people to you. Think about it this way. The people that know you and that love you know who you are on the foundations of who you are. So when they see you thriving and living in your intuitive abilities and your purpose, then it kind of gives them this, if that person can do it, then maybe I have these abilities too. Or this person feels safe to me because I know them. Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about how this all works? You're drawing in the people that need to learn from you. Your light then turns on other lights. But how do you get through it? How do you really kind of say, oh, I'm going to do it. How do I get through it? A large amount of people that I work with will have life transitions. They find me when they've had a life transition, and then they find me before they have a life transition. Life transitions range from all different extremes. And a lot of the main core life transitions I'll see are, hey, I want to start my business, or hey, I want to know my purpose, or hey, this experience happened to me. What the F? What happened here? Tell me more about this. And sometimes people are really going through a pivot and they're really, really trying to find their purpose. The way that I recommend to get through it is, one, your spirit guides. My spirit guides helped me change so many things. When I truly announced to the world, I am a medium and I am doing readings and I am aligning to my path and I'm going to live this life. Because one of the big things for me is I don't want to get to the end of my life and think I regret stuff, that I missed stuff, that I was too afraid to do stuff. I want to put all my cards out on the table this lifetime. And if you're with me, I hope you're saying, hell yeah, like I want to do this too. So I told my spirit guides, hey, I'm not happy in my job. I'm not happy it was my first marriage. And I said, I really need support here. I really need some inspiration and some help to shift me out of these choices that I made at a lower vibration, because then I had raised my vibration. Well, my spirit guide said, all right, let's do this. I had already gotten the intuitive messages to start my part-time business. And when I really talked to my guides and said, I need you to help me, and I gave them permission to kind of just take over, like just make me do it, because I was really stalling. Well, they did so many weird things. One is I knew I needed to leave my first marriage. And what was really interesting is I was having this conversation with my spirit guides, telling them what I needed to do and how I needed to leave, but I was really afraid to do this. What was interesting is my cell phone was on the passenger seat, and this is before I think even maybe Siri existed. I don't know. I can't remember, but it was a while back. And my cell phone had called my husband at the time and left a voicemail. of this conversation. And he only heard bits and pieces, but he brought it up like, hey, what was that about? So that was really interesting, right? Like, Whitney, you gave us permission, like, we're going to do this. The other thing is, I was in my job that I really hated, and I finally just got up and left. You may have heard the story before if you've worked with me or even on this podcast, but I'm a strong channeler. So there's four main intuitive languages: seer, owl, empath, and channeler. And channeler really experiences intuition in their body and knowing, and they just react to things. And I just reacted and left. I would have never done that logically. I just would not have done it. And it worked out really beautifully. And my part-time business that I had started went from part-time to full-time overnight. There could be a lot of logical explanations. Maybe the Google algorithm changed and everyone found me, but I think it's spirit. So your spirit guides are really great to help you get through it. But I want to talk about two other things. One is support. You absolutely need support to help get through this. Now, you might not have it right away because maybe all of your friends and your family and the situations that you've been in were chosen from your older vibration, and maybe you can't talk to them. So really finding support, people who are in a like-minded vibration that understand this, are going to be very helpful. For me, I kind of had this knowing in my community. I was like, I know there are people out there like me somewhere, but where are they? And this was back when I was really concerned about normal. I was like, but they might not be normal like me, which is just silly. But finally, when I started making these choices, I started to be drawn to events and classes, and I would meet these people. One of the big things that I do inside of my programs with Four Intuitive Languages is I have a group community so that people can network and connect with one another to have support. People can ask questions. Hey, do you feel the weird moon energy today? Or, hey, I got this weird spirit message. Hey, did this happen to you too? That's really important as you're moving through some of these transitions. And even though this is online, people start connecting and then meeting on Zoom and then become lifelong friends. My lifelong friends that I've had, and no, I didn't know them from when I was born, but I met them when I first became open to my spirituality and intuitive gifts, and they are still my best friends today. And that is not uncommon. I see this so very much. Now, the third thing I want to say to you, which is still in the realm of support, but it's more so mentorship. That really helped me. I bugged my mentor a zillion times with questions because I had so many unanswered curiosities in my mind that I couldn't make sense of. And as a teacher now and a mentor for others, I welcome questions. That's why I do my live Q&A, because I know that there's so many questions burning inside of someone. And it's just like this box that opens and it's like, well, what about this? And what about this? And was what I saw in this movie real? So that's why we have Q&A inside of the program. So mentorship, talk to your spirit guides, and support from like-minded people. Those are really those three main ingredients. But what I want you to understand here is trust yourself. And trusting yourself can be a journey. Trusting yourself takes a little while from so many reasons that I could record a whole other podcast episode on. That can be one of the hardest things to do. And when you're developing your intuitive abilities, one of the things that I do in my programs is I'll partner you up with someone to actually give messages to someone else, because unfortunately, people will trust someone else telling them their messages are real. And I say unfortunately in a sense of over trusting themselves. But the positive side of that is when people read each other, they don't know who this other person is staring at them on Zoom or on the other end of the phone. And when they give messages, you can feel like you're making a bunch of shit up, like blah, blah, blah. I'm seeing this purple orb and I'm seeing a wallet and who knows what comes through. Whatever you deliver, though, when you see that other person or you hear the other person say, that makes 100% sense, then it gives you this feeling of validation. We recently had one of these events that I do, and I had two students. One of them was asking about finding something, and the other person said, have you been missing a piece of jewelry? And I need you to look under the bed. And the person said, I just looked under the bed. There's nothing under there. And the student was like, please look under the bed. The person looked under the bed and there's everything that, she needed to know. So it's just really beautiful how these things work out. But really, I wish more people would trust themselves. What's interesting is you develop your intuitive gifts even in the place where you don't feel supported by your friends or family. But this really, honestly, what this means at the very, let's say, completeness and the wholeness of everything is how to trust yourself, have more confidence in yourself, and how to love yourself as unique and authentic as you are. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope this gives you some tips and some inspiration. I will link to some resources in the show notes, and I will see you inside of the next episode. But until then, here's to staying spiritual and ambitious. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. And if you loved it, would you please share it with a friend? I would also love your review and a reminder to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find me at messengerofspirit.com. And you can take the 4 Intuitive Languages quiz and find show notes there too. If you want to connect on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, you can find me at Messenger of Spirit. If you want to continue the conversation, join my free Facebook group at messengerofspirit.com/group. I'll meet you right here next week. Here's to staying spiritual and ambitious.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.